Today on FAS TV, we're taking a look at rural crime. We visit one farmer in Argyll to hear about the impact livestock attacks have had on his business. And we hear from Police Scotland about rural crime and the new amendments to the Dogs Protection of Livestock Amendment Scotland Act 2021. Rural crime is a major issue for farmers, crofters and rural communities. The Scottish Partnership Against Rural Crime is a multi-agency partnership collectively working together to tackle crime in rural areas. Inspector Alan Drawn, along with colleagues in Police Scotland and Neighbourhood Watch, have some practical advice to farmers, crofters and those living and working in rural areas.
I'm Inspector Alan Drawn. I have the privilege of being the Rural Crime Coordinator for Police Scotland, and I'm in charge of the National Rural and Acquisitive Crime Unit. We have responsibility for everything in Scotland that is rural, everything that is heritage and cultural property, everything that is illicit trade, everything that's access related, everything that is acquisitive crime, and also everything now that is visitor management. SPARC, the Scottish Partnership Against Rural Crime, is 22 really key national organisations, such as Scottish Forestry and Land Scotland, you've got Scottish Power Renewables, Scottish Water, the National Farmers Union, the Mutual, Scottish Land and Estates, many others, who all work together to tackle, preventing and reducing rural crime throughout Scotland. One of the key things that we're trying to encourage is to get that local buy-in. So to drive the national message and the national strategy, we've got to make sure that whether you're based in Caithness or Dumfries or Kelso or the Islands, everywhere in between, you have a part to play in contributing. So we have 15 local partnerships against rural crime throughout Scotland that are already up and running. They involve all of the same partners that are on SPARC, but it's local people in local areas solving local issues. I think for Scotland, the main things that a lot of the criminals are targeting, and on a regular basis, are agricultural and forestry, plant, machinery, tools, quad bikes, high value, easily sold on. If you look just now at quad bikes, it's round about 3 months, to 36 months before you can get a new one, so that's some span, but if you need your quad bike now, so there's lots of supply and demand for things like that. Other things which is quite surprising is like heritage crime, which is really rocketed, fly tipping, obviously livestock theft, and again that's something that we expect with the financial crisis, the cost of living that might actually increase. So there's all these sort of things, fuel theft, timber theft, they're the very current main sort of crimes and offences that are being targeted across Scotland.
Sadly, rural crime is increasing, but there are a number of practical measures farmers and crofters can take to reduce the risk to their machinery, livestock and property.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've tried to really gently influence, and it takes time, is just trying to change perception. So, to any crofter farmer, starting with general basic common sense preventions. So things like making sure keys are out of vehicles. If at night, and it might take a little bit longer, but put your quad bike or your tractor or trailer behind maybe a secured door. Have good lighting. Shut that gate at night, if you're not going in and out. Put up signage. If somebody, it's common sense, if they see a sign that says CCTV in operation or you're part of Rural Watch, whatever it is, they'll go to the next farm entrance that doesn't say that. And it's just starting with simple common sense and not expensive ways of looking out for also your neighbour. Who's on the next farm? Who is out and about? Is there a vehicle that's coming to a road end? Report it to the police, because we're listening. If anything is ongoing, dial 999 without a shadow of a doubt, because it's an ongoing crime or incident or suspicious person. So if a vehicle's coming in somewhere that it shouldn't really be, phone the police, because there's more chance the quicker you do that, you'll get a response. And it also might not just be at your farm entrance, it might be elsewhere. That's working. We're starting to get more people reporting, so it's building that confidence. Join your local Rural Watch, you'll get alerts that go out in real time, and you might only get part of your registration or see somebody, but your neighbour might fill in the blanks. If it's not ongoing, then dial 101 which I know can be, sometimes not the most effective. But we've also got an email system called Contact Us, and we've encouraged a lot of landowners, crofters, farmers, put it in an email, send it off to the control room. They still get that, they still create an incident, and the police will then still respond. So it's just trying to build this confidence that the police are listening, and we will actually do something about it.
Dog attacks on livestock is a major concern for livestock farmers, but considerable progress has been made in changing the law.
This was a real big win for the Scottish Partnership Against Rural Crime. We were in it from the start in helping Emma Harper, MSP, change the livestock legislation. Now that's a first for the UK. We're still the only place in the UK that now talks about livestock attacks and worrying. Straight away it changes the gravity. It actually changes the perception that it's not just a sheep that's being slightly chased by a dog. It can be obviously fatal consequences. It's the knock-on effects to the farming, the line of the stock. So we now are the only place in the UK that talks about attacks and worrying. We've changed legislation from the 1953 Act to recently there's the new Dogs Protection of Livestock Amendment Scotland Act 2021. Straight away, huge change in perception. Folks now know that if you're out in whatever environment that's got livestock and your dog isn't under control, you can get fined up to £40,000 now. Previously that was only £1,000. You can also get 12 months in jail, and there are other breaches if you get imposed on that will cost you £5,000 for your trouble if you don't abide by them. So a whole change in approach because it is such a serious issue. The other thing we managed to change was the definition. So camelids, such as alpaca, llamas are now included, ostriches, because that's reflecting modern day farming practices. So if you are an alpaca farmer or an ostrich, why should you not get the same protection as someone who's got cattle or sheep? So in Scotland we've actually made a lot of progress, and again it'll be constant. Unfortunately there still is incidents, at least maybe one a day throughout Scotland.
Throughout the pandemic, fly tipping has also increased, causing major issues on farms and in rural areas.
Fly tipping is something that Scotland has a genuine issue with, and it's changing. And I'm really hoping there's a parallel to what we've just talked about with the livestock attacks and worrying. The newspapers were full of fly tipping, and it was one of the things that spiked. So it's on the radar of politicians, it's on the radar of policing, enforcement, landowners, which is good because everybody's talking about it. And obviously it went on to dirty camping, so that's where it came into us as well for visitor management. There are changes afoot. Scottish Government are just launching the new 5-year strategy on litter and fly tipping. Before it was just litter. So that's a huge big sea change, perception-wise. There's also a members' bill going through this Parliament about tackling fly tipping and strengthening 4 key areas. Now, what we're hoping will come from that is that if somebody gets up in the morning and finds, unfortunately there's been a bit of fly tipping on their site, if it's not ongoing, a lot of that will fall to the local authority to uplift. There then comes this debate if it's on private land. Some local authorities will come in and uplift it, and that's something we're trying to get more consistency of. If it's ongoing, if it's near a watercourse or it's toxic, then obviously that falls to SEPA. And also, if they phone the police, trying to get the fire service involved, particularly if it is maybe hazardous. So there's a lot more partnership and people talking about how they can tackle that one problem of fly tipping. And the fact they're talking about it will hopefully lead to better improvements. But it needs better fines. It needs people being really made aware of it. And if landowners take photographs of whatever's been fly tipped, rather than just cleaning it up themselves, or we can try and get car registration numbers, white van man. The Fiscal's looking to really prosecute. And we've had a couple of successes recently, but they're all too far and few between.
Brian Walker is a tenant farmer at Carlunan Farm in Argyll, which runs 70 suckler cows and 1,000 breeding ewes on 1,000 acres. Over the years, Brian has experienced a number of livestock attacks, including 2 major ones on the farm, which have had a significant impact on his business.
Yeah, if we go back to 2010 when we had the first sort of reasonably big attack where something like 19 sheep in the end had to be put down. Some of them were maimed and mutilated and were dead in the field at the time, and the rest had to be euthanized later on. In between then and 2018 we had a couple of minor attacks, but in 2018 we had a major attack where I came across the same field as such and the same breeding hogs. Some of the animals were literally no faces on them when I came into the field, and we had in that incident 11 sheep that had to be euthanized at the time. The dogs involved in that attack as such weren't there on the day, and we couldn't find anybody for the incident, and having involved the police and local dog wardens, we could not pin anybody down for the crime at the time. But roughly a week later, in a different field, 2 dogs were discovered attacking the sheep by a chap who was looking after the farm for me one evening, and it turns out, having managed to get the police and stuff involved, that they was the same dogs who were involved in that original attack. Since then, in 2019, we had another brief incident just down the road here where a dog left its owner and crossed the river and started attacking the sheep, and which was eventually caught up, and the people involved were dealt with at the time. In terms of the very first attack, which was in a field of breeding ewe hogs as such, which are kept for replacements, and in this sort of area the hill sheep stocks are hefted, so you cannot buy in replacements as such. So in that attack 20% of one hill was lost, so that takes breeding sheep out of the equation for 5 years as such. So it takes quite a lot of time to sort of rebuild that just through naturally keeping extra ewe hogs in other years and stuff like that. From a financial point of view, these were breeding ewe hogs, which on the first incident we lost 20% of our breeding stock, replacement breeding stock as such, and on the second one there was 10% of the breeding stock on the same hill lost to that. So financially, there's an accumulative loss of the loss of production from these animals over a period of 5 years.
Livestock attacks have a financial impact on a business. However, there's also an emotional impact for the farmer who cares for the animals that have been attacked.
For me personally, it's a very difficult thing to actually go into a field and discover animals lying dead in burns with their stomachs ripped open, or going about with legs crunched up where they can hardly walk, or in the worst incident where basically the animals' faces were totally ripped off, is a very, very difficult thing to deal with. And for what I would say is, to understand that, is how would you feel if you came down in the morning or came across something that's part of your life in terms of your pets, where you discovered them totally ripped to pieces. It's a very difficult thing to deal with.
Educating urban dwellers on how to enjoy the countryside responsibly with their dog is key to help reduce the risk of livestock attacks occurring.
Yeah, I think with social media and stuff nowadays, people view that all the time, so there's enough mediums and people involved in that should be able to portray that and get it across to people. What we've done with our local group is we've put together signage for landowners and farmers to put out and all the access points that we can, so there's guidance there for people to see when they do get to the countryside. But we've also put together guidance for dog owners which go out in puppy packs with local vets and stuff like that. So there are a lot of mediums, and I also believe that countryside managers like Nature Scotland and that should be able to put guidance out in their country parks at access points too, for people to understand what they should do and how they should behave when they're in the countryside.
Following the attack in 2018, Brian is now part of a local group which focuses on putting together information for Brian's fellow farmers and crofters about what to do if their livestock are attacked.
The group that I'm involved in was put together as a result of the dog attack that took place in 2018, when both the Police Scotland and the local dog warden were so frustrated that they could not do anything within law to charge the owner of the dogs or have him banned from keeping dogs for life as such, as what should have been the case when it was so bad. We brought in together with the local vets, SSPCA, National Sheep Association and NFU Scotland to put together guidance leaflets for farmers in how to act in the incidence of a dog attack, and to put together signage, warning signage for farmers and landowners to put out on their access routes to warn the public on how to behave or what the penalties are if your dog gets out of control. We've also been involved in helping MSP Emma Harper put together the consultation to change the law from the Act that was in place in 1958, which was very successfully put through Parliament by MSP Emma Harper and her team, to get the law changed to where it is now, where it's now up to a £40,000 fine, up to 12 months in jail, and a possible ban from keeping, owning and handling anyone else's dogs if you're found guilty of causing an offence.
What practical advice does Brian have for other farmers and crofters?
There is nothing really much we can do in terms of anything other than putting up signage as such, like handing out guidance leaflets. I mean, if other farmers have good relationships with the local vets and other things like that, they can talk to them, and they can obviously get in touch with myself or the local group to get guidance stuff that they can put out. But other than that, there's very little we can do to prevent these sort of things happening, because with the best will in the world, you can't tell everybody what's going on. So if the signage is there, that's all we can really do. In an incident where the dog is attacking the sheep, straight away just call 999, and the police are duty bound now by law to respond to that. If you have come across a scenario where you've got sheep that have been attacked by a dog and there's nobody about, you can still call 101 and make sure you do so, and the police are again duty bound to come out and investigate that as a rural crime. And if for any reason that there's going to be a delay, if they say that they're not going to be able to get there straight away, there are certain things that you can do, which we have in our guidance leaflets, by taking DNA sampling yourself from the sheep and putting it in a fridge and stuff like that, which can be added and make a big difference to the police when they do come to investigate the crime.
Ben Rusden is a police sergeant in Lochgilphead, mid-Argyll. If your livestock have been attacked or are being attacked, the safety and well-being of the animals is the first priority, and there are steps that a farmer can take to report the incident and gather evidence.
I'm currently a police sergeant at Lochgilphead, cover the mid-Argyll area. I've been a police officer for 16 years and I'm currently a shift supervisor. I have specialist roles of wildlife crime, and at the moment I lead a prevention group in the prevention of livestock attacks in mid-Argyll. The most important thing for a farmer to do if they see a dog attacking their livestock is just act on their instinct. Their instinct is just to protect the animal, and that's the most important thing. Unfortunately, people become very protective over their own animals and their own dogs, so it's important that the farmer safeguards himself as long as the animal. There's no set answer here, it's just to do whatever is necessary and proportionate to safeguard the animal, make sure that they're safe. From a policing point of view, it's ideal if they're able to secure and obtain evidence for us, but that's not the most important factor. Make sure that they're safe, the animals are safe, and we can deal with whatever's presented when we get there. If a farmer's come across what they suspect to be a dog attack, then it's imperative for them to record what they have, the evidence that they have presented, and the best way for that is to take photographs and information. That should always be reported to the police. If they suspect that a crime's been committed, then report that and we will come and investigate and progress that inquiry. Act quickly, look to secure as much evidence as they can, and this could be via photographs, taking notes, and then contact the police immediately. time helps us with the inquiry. If we can get to a site quickly, we can get that carcass sent away for examination, and we can determine a cause of death. And if there is a dog bite attack, then we can secure potential DNA evidence from the bite location, and again that can help us progress an inquiry. If we don't get that timelessly, then it makes our inquiry more difficult, and we're not able to accurately record it as a crime and fully investigate the incident.
Now that the livestock attack has been reported with evidence gathered, what happens next in the process?
Once a farmer has reported an offence to the police, we'll record that as a crime and carry out a full investigation. This is all depending on the circumstances of the incident, and it will include taking statements, obtaining physical evidence if appropriate. We can, if we have a suspect dog, we can now seize that dog and have an examination and obtain physical evidence from it, take the dog's DNA, and then if an inquiry is progressed to court, then the matter will be reported to court and for criminal proceedings to start. In November 2021 there was an amendment to the original Act, which is Section 1 of the Dogs Protection of Livestock Act 1953, which is only applicable in Scotland. This new amendment gives a new penalty, which is up to a £40,000 fine or up to 12 months in prison, or a combination of both. So this is a really harsh penalty, as it should be. And in addition to this, the new powers allow the court to issue a disqualification order in respect of somebody owning or being in possession of a dog for a set period of time, which is, again, a fantastic way for the legislation to help support preventing attacks.
Preventing attacks by educating dog owners on their responsibilities in the countryside is important, and farmers can aid that education through a variety of ways.
Farmers are living and working the land on a daily basis, and it's up to them to help us support preventing attacks, and we do this by positive engagement and education. I have a number of resources, some booklets and posters that we can present, and hopefully we can prevent the attacks before they happen. And the resources are available for farmers to put up post it on signs and access gates, and hopefully in doing this we can raise awareness and prevent the attacks before they occur.
Neighbourhood Watch Scotland is a community-led initiative bringing people together to address crime in their local area. Neighbourhood Watch Scotland works closely with Police Scotland to prevent, communicate and tackle crime in rural areas.
I'm Willie Clark. I'm the National Coordinator for Neighbourhood Watch Scotland. Neighbourhood Watch Scotland is a charitable incorporated organisation, and we're part of the Scottish Government Building Safer Communities programme. Fair to say that Neighbourhood Watch is really all about communities. It's about people, and it probably did first come to the UK in the 80s, and that value of Neighbourhood Watch has never changed. It's collectively about bringing communities together, building resilience within communities and getting communities to share information and look after each other. Well, one of the things, obviously Rural Watch is the rural arm of Neighbourhood Watch, exactly the same values, and within the kind of rural side of things at the moment, we work within the Scottish Partnership Against Rural Crime, and we've been involved in that for a number of years now through the Rural Watch arm, if you like, and that's really just about a multi-agency approach, partnership approach to tackling rural crime in Scotland. But what we're seeing at the moment is obviously an increase in fuel theft, which is understandable. We're also seeing theft of quad bikes, theft of tractors, sheep worrying, theft of livestock. So they tend to be the kind of key issues that we're kind of constantly seeing in the kind of rural communities. Also housebreakings, which is again direct attacks at properties, etc. What we do as part of Rural Watch and Neighbourhood Watch is, as I was saying earlier, communication is really key, and we're quite fortunate in Scotland that we facilitate a communication platform called Neighbourhood Alert. Now what that allows, it allows our key information providers to use that platform to put out real-time, trusted relevant alerts, and that's the key. It's real time and it's trusted information. Again, going out to communities and allowing communities to get that information, and then we know that most of our communities in any case are already linked into social media, that type of thing. They can then propagate that information further, and that's a key part of what Neighbourhood Watch, Rural Watch is all about. It's about being aware of who in your community perhaps do not have access to that, the vulnerable in the community, and propagating, getting that message out further. And we know in the farming community everybody knows what's going on and what their neighbours are doing and all that type of thing. So through this platform it just allows a kind of more formal process of getting that relevant, localised and even national information, but it's relevant, and getting it out quickly to our communities. Predominantly it's emails, but you can also send messages by text or by voicemail depending on urgency. And it's totally free for people to join. There's no cost to it whatsoever. It's here, it's available in Scotland at the moment, and over the past several years we've been running it, we've seen a marked increase in people beginning to join it. Just go into either the Neighbourhood Watch Scotland or Rural Watch Scotland website, and there's a join button, big green join button, and it's just a case of pressing that, putting in your details, filling in a registration, either a quick one or you can go in later and fill up more details, and that's you on the system, and then you'll get any of the messages that are getting sent out over the system. If you're a farmer and you see something, or your property's been tampered with, or there's been any kind of attack, anything like that, it's important that you report it through the normal channels. Using 101, and I know there's issues with 101 and communities tell us about that as well. So obviously I'd say if it's something really urgent, you go for 999, there's a 101, but there's also a reporting process through the Police Scotland webpage whereby it's called a contact form, and basically you can go in and you can put in a message, put in details, and it goes direct to Police Scotland and they'll get back to you to follow it up. So there's sort of free ways there to report it. Also you can report anonymous information through the Crime Stoppers number, which is another national number that's available, and again that's really useful if you want to pass any information but perhaps you don't want to give your specific details. But the key is to report these things, because that intelligence it creates a picture, and it's important that we know about it.
With a firm grasp of current issues in rural areas, Willie has some practical advice to farmers and crofters across the country.
To prevent crime, and back in my day when I was a police officer, we worked to there was a saying that we used to say, it was about delay, deny, deter. That simple crime prevention way of dealing with things. So really you've got to look at your property, your sort of where you are, because everything's site specific, but the main thing to think about initially is access control. That's probably one of the most crucial things about limiting access to your property, as in the routes that are coming in and the routes that are going out. And I know that can be difficult in some situations, but if you've got one route in and one route out, you've got a control there, and that's a good deterrent. Obviously that's backed up with good signage, which again is showing an element of control that you're making in your property, and it makes people think twice about what they're coming into and who's watching and that type of thing. So that's one thing to look at. The next part is probably a wee bit about surveillance, and that's kind of just again using what perhaps you've got. I was talking about fuel earlier, fuel being a problem with fuel crime. If you've got fuel tanks, you should never be thinking about siting them close to your home and your property where it's being overlooked. So what we talk about there is it's a kind of natural surveillance. You can think about things like CCTV. CCTV is what we call formal surveillance. So again, that's a really good tool. There's a vast amount of CCTV systems out there, but again the police or ourselves can give good advice with regards to perhaps what's best suitable for your individual setup. So again, think about that, because that can make a huge difference. And again, with this signage to say that you've got CCTV, it's putting out a clear message there and a clear kind of deterrent about what you've got set up in your property. Padlocks and locks, again, crucial, but again it's about using the right locks and using them in the right situation. And again, you can be given good advice about what's suitable for you and for your premises. So there's various things. Tracker devices are brilliant. There's a whole host of, again, tracker devices that are now being used and used really effectively. So think about tracker devices for things like quad bikes, your machinery, tractors, that type of thing. Marking, forensic marking is a big thing now. So forensic marking is marking where it's not visible, but again, it gives you a direct link to your property and you know where you're going to, the property that you're marking. So there's a link there. And again, there's a lot of kind of, what I would say is really specialist marking equipment available now for everybody. And again, Police Scotland, ourselves can signpost people to where they can get that. So think about marking and think about tracking devices and that type of thing as well. Lighting is key as well. Obviously, criminals don't like to work where they're going to be seen. And if you've got lighting there, probably the sensor lighting is the best, where it just comes on when there's movement and detects movement. Again, that's a good deterrent and it works effectively. You've just got to check that if you've got CCTV, that your lighting, again, is adequate for your CCTV. So these type of things are things, that, again, that we can point you in the right direction about what you need. And Police Scotland provide a service where they can even do a crime prevention survey for you if you require it.
Hello, my name is Tiffany McTaggart and I'm an agricultural consultant with SAC Consulting. Today we're going to be talking about preparing for sustainable farming in this week's Rural Roundup. Preparing for sustainable farming was launched earlier this year and is live on the Rural Payments and Services website. So preparing for sustainable farming is starting to look at what farmers are doing on their own farms and how they can improve what they're doing. So there's two elements to this. There is funding available for carbon audits as well as funding available for soil sampling. For a farmer to be eligible for funding for a carbon audit, they can't have had a carbon audit done in the past 3 years. So if you've not had one done at all, or it's been further than 3 years ago, you're eligible to receive funding. You will be required to undertake a carbon audit with a company which adheres to the FAS 2050 standard. In addition to this, you will also have to have mitigations provided by an FAS qualified advisor. If you meet these two criteria, you'll be then eligible to claim grant funding of £500 back afterwards. It is very important to complete a carbon audit. It's a way for you to consider what your business is doing, where your business is most efficient, where it's not quite so efficient, where the emissions are coming from, and which areas you're also doing very well at. Some of you may already have considered your carbon emissions, whereas others haven't, so it's a great starting place to think about what your farm is doing. So the second element to preparing for sustainable farming at the moment is soil sampling and analysis. So soil sampling, you're eligible if you have got Region 1 land. So to calculate how much of the land that you are eligible for funding for, you have a look at your BPS claim. So in the year that you're claiming for on your BPS claim, you are able to claim for 1/5 of your land that you claimed as Region 1 land. So for every hectare that you have, you're able to claim £30. So you can just do a bit of quick maths and calculate what area is eligible for funding. So for the soil sampling, you're required to sample for pH, phosphate, potash and carbon. So for the carbon, it could be the Dumas test or it could be loss on ignition. So making sure that you have all these elements when you do your soil sampling is key to them being able to claim the grant funding. It doesn't matter if you want to do a W pattern across the field or if you'd prefer to do GPS soil sampling. It's whatever suits your farm, but you cannot exceed the maximum allowance which you've already calculated. So the reason why soil sampling is so important is to get you to think about your nutrient management on your farm. So depending on what your soil analysis results are saying, it means you can alter your applications of nutrients and use them as efficiently as possible. This in turn can help reduce potential runoff or potential losses of nitrogen to the environment, which is important to do. So for the nutrient management side of it, you can also receive funding the first year which you claim funding for soil analysis. You can receive additional funding for you to go and undertake a learning experience on nutrient management. So this could be going on a course or just taking time out to speak to your advisor and learn more about doing your own nutrient management planning. It's a great thing to do because then you're able to go and apply your mucks and manures more efficiently and use them on the fields which are going to benefit from the most from them. So following on from track 1, track 2 has very recently been announced. So track 2, instead of just focusing on what the farmer's doing on their own farm, this is looking at a bigger sector approach. So for this bigger sector approach, what they're doing to start with is a questionnaire to farmers. This is a way for them to gather information, find out about what farmers' thoughts are on different aspects, and is a way to see what the constraints are as well. So in the questionnaire there's a range of questions. This includes questions on carbon audits, nutrient management plans, biodiversity, animal health and welfare, breeding plans. There's a whole host of questions covering a huge range of topics. On the 30th of June, people who were selected to take part in this questionnaire were sent out an email, and on the email there's a link to the questionnaire. So people who've received the email have been invited to take part in the study, and if they do take part, all participants will receive £50, which will just be paid to you to your bank account where you receive your BPS. For those of you who received an email asking you to take part in the questionnaire, this is open until the 27th of July. After the 27th of July, this information will be looked at, identify any gaps in the data that's been gathered, because they want to have a representative sample across the whole of Scotland. So then in August, they will then invite further people to go and take part in the survey. Unfortunately, not everybody is being invited to take part in the study, but they are looking for volunteers. So during July, they're going to have a host of social media campaigns just to try and get the information out there. So if you go and respond to these campaigns and register your interest, then you'll be invited as a volunteer to take part in the questionnaire in August. Following on from this, they're then going to have a look at the information that they've gathered and make a plan going forward. So what the aim is to be able to come up with a set of measures or conditions which farmers are going to have to implement. So it is looking likely at the moment that they're going to do some pilot testing on further measures which could be implemented on farm in autumn 2023. Thank you for watching this episode of FAS TV. We'll see you again soon.